So this project is shadow and light. So you're going to go out and look for shadows in your scenery, and you're going to look for light. You've seen photographs where people were in shadow. If you just move their head, their face would be into the light. So a photograph is illuminated by light, and that's what makes it so interesting. Light makes photography. Embrace light. Admire it. Love it. But above all, know light. Know it for all you are worth. And you will know the key to photography. And that quote is by George Eastman. So you want to embrace it. You want to look for it. So let's start looking at some photos. This is a shadow shot, and we're going to start with shadows. And light creates shadows. This is one of mine. I was walking down the street, and I had my iPhone with me, and that's all I had. I was walking the dog. And there was a bicycle on top of a car, and it was being illuminated on the building across the street. So it doesn't matter whether you're shooting with a DSLR or your iPhone, mirrorless, whatever. If you see something, make the image. I ran home. I was like less than a block away from home to grab another camera to make a better quality image or an image that would give me a larger file size. And I got back and this was gone. And I've never seen this again. And I walk by here all the time. So if you see something, always make the photograph. So out on a hike, I was just looking at the harsh shadows that were occurring up in the mountains. So just playing with composition, letting the shadows move around the frame to drag your eye. So play with it, like I maybe made 10 shots here. Another shadow shot. I actually moved the camera. I held a slow shutter speed and moved it just to see what would happen. I thought it was dramatic and interesting. So I kind of held it still for a second, and then I moved it. So I could have part of that image totally in print before I got some motion. Out walking again, a sculpture. I walk by this all the time. I never saw this, but I wasn't walking by it the right time of day. So I was out at a different point of the day to see this shadow. And I wanted to show the fence. So if you look at the bottom right corner, I intentionally framed the fence into the shot. Obviously, we know there's a fence because you can see that in the shadow as well. But just playing, giving more information, building the scene. You just kind of build as much information in as you can to tell the story you want to tell. Once again, out walking. So the bird was part of the fence. We can't see it in the fence, but we see the shadow. And then I love the dramatic line of shadow that's happening up, taking us to the right side of the frame. And I processed this dark. I processed it to make the shadows darker. So when you process the files, you have control over the drama that you're creating as well. Little tree, never noticed this thing before. But one day, again, out walking, there it was. So it's important to walk at different times of day to make your images or create different lighting. Even when you're sitting in your home, look around and see what you see as far as shadows go. Same spot, same time, same day, within minutes. So I was just playing with the compositions, getting up high and looking down, and then getting down low and letting the camera swoop up into the top corner. Once again, a little editing to make the shadows blacker. On the left-hand side, I love the little circles in the fence and then the rocks, the organic roundness of the rocks. I love that relationship that's being built between those two elements. A dramatic snow day. So light is important too. So those clouds, unfortunately in Vegas we don't see a lot of that, but it adds for some drama. So it was a contrasty day. The shadows popped out and then the sky was just beautiful with those clouds. So a little bit ago I mentioned looking into the light or looking away from the light. So my puppy dog here cooperated. She turned one way and she's in shadow. Not a good photograph. She turns her head the other way. The light is illuminating her. And you can see the shadow in the first one. She's looking towards the shadow, so you can see that she's in shadow. The other one, her shadow is being cast, but we can see her face. So just a turn of the head sometimes adds to the story, tells the story, makes the story. I was at the car dealership waiting on my car to get serviced. So I was just playing with shadow. Unfortunately, I noticed I grabbed the one that had my feet in it over on the right. There's one that does not have my feet in it. But anyways, a little play, playing with that red line and seeing what it does. So these are two separate photographs. I see now side by side, it's rather chaotic to look at the two together. I don't like that. Here's an image that I pulled off the internet. Look at that dark shadow. Look at how the eye is popping out. This is so dramatic. I'm guessing that you're not going to be doing something like this in this class, but we do have lighting classes and portraiture classes down the road for you guys where you would learn all of how to control the light to do this in the studio. So this was a studio shot. I just thought these were cool, so I just added them in just to show you. Nice and drama-filled. Not one of mine, but it looks like it was shot somewhere in the Southwest. But that shadow. Looking. Another great shadow shot with that hand in front of the face. It obscures the face, but it tells so much. A Vegas shot, one of mine. Very dramatic, harsh lighting going down that alley to that cautionary sign to let you know that there's a wall there, if you couldn't tell. And then that nice strong shadow. I'm just going to hop back here for a second. One thing too, I didn't process this out so that I lost all the detail in the right-hand side where the shadow is. I wanted to show those cinder blocks. But wonder how it would look if I did totally black them out in processing. So something to play with, something to think about. Another dramatic Vegas shot. Look at how the light is coming from behind that palm and how some of those leaves are just kind of illuminating and glowing and then others aren't. It's because there's another palm back there. And then that dramatic shadow, it almost looks like a bird taking flight. So we're building story. And of course, no trespassing. And that little tree looks like a trespasser to me. So we're going to look at some light now. Morning shot. Up in a balloon, dramatic lighting from behind using the balloon to obscure part of it. But how it catches in the river is kind of interesting. So it just kind of gives a glow. It's very peaceful, a classic shot. This was shot with an app, but the sky was that dramatic and the reds were that dramatic. But we're losing the true color because it's going to black and white. But I thought that was a pretty cool shot just for drama. So playing with apps and altering things is a-okay. Not everything has to be realistic. This is one of my shots. I threw it up on Facebook the year that I did it, and it was my most liked photo of the year. Craziness. By the time I walked off the dock back to land, it was so dark. I like freaked myself out. I had to like crawl down the dock because I didn't know where the dock ended and where the water was. I was like, oh my gosh. So try to be safe. This shot was just made with an iPhone using those portrait settings. So the iPhone itself actually created that circle of light that is the glass. So your phones have things that they do as well. So if it's a tool, go for it. Try it. I probably had to take 6-7 shots before I got it to align how I wanted it to, though. So just know that the first one isn't always the done deal. You might have to play a little bit more. This has a border on it, and that's from an app called Snapseed, which we're going to be playing with later in the semester. So if you want to download it and play with it sooner, that is a-okay. Now that you're using Lightroom Mobile, you're going to see a lot of similarities between the two. One of the nice things is that sometimes Lightroom Mobile does something better, and other times Snapseed does something better. So if one doesn't look the way you like, you might be able to refine it using the other app. And Snapseed is a free app. Out again, walking in my neighborhood. These are reflections off of car windows onto adobe walls. And I just love the movement here. I love the abstract quality. I processed it contrasty, so the blacks were really black. I added texture and clarity to these to pull out that texture in the wall. And I just thought this was a fun little set. I've been building on these for the last, 3 months. I want to do a wall of 20 of them or something. I think that would be visually very interesting. So, and the abstraction is a-okay. It just has to be well composed. You have to put those skills that you're learning into play so that everything has a purpose and a place, even if it is not necessarily a recognizable object. Sometimes movement within the frame is enough. Here's a shot. I was out on my parents' deck looking out at the golf course at a beautiful sky, and the right-hand side is what it looked like initially, and the left-hand side is how I processed it. So pulling out the color, making those clouds blacker and more dramatic, and I didn't need the information at the bottom of the scene. A lot of times I'm going to tell you guys, bring in that shadow detail, but it wasn't needed here because it was so minor. This is a light flare. The lens on my phone was dirty and it created that swoop. So I did clean the lens, but when I got home, I actually kind of enjoyed the movement here and everything that was happening. It was just visually chaotic. I haven't done anything with this photograph yet, but I might. This is still in its raw form. I haven't really processed it out in any way, but I just wanted to show you the flare. Sometimes flares are good, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're caused by dust on your lens. Sometimes it's caused by the angle of the lens to the sun. So you might see a different type of lens flare when you're out shooting. I pulled some of these photographs from Amy Vitale, a National Geographic photographer. So dramatic darkness, yet the sun is illuminating the woman's face and she's looking right at the photographer. Very dramatic photograph. This is a silhouette. This is an image that we're going to ask for in our technical project. And a silhouette is, the light is on the other side of these people, and from the side that we're on, they're black. So there's no light hitting the side that we're looking at, and it's dramatic. So silhouettes can be used effectively. And what's really cool in this photograph is that reflective floor. So we've got the dramatic bright light in the background, the silhouette, and then the reflection. So multiple elements building in this particular image. And this is Annie Griffiths, another National Geographic photographer. The light of the color of light is coming from the bulbs or the lights that are illuminating this water. And then, of course, this is the blue hour. It's a time of the evening before dusk where the sky goes blue right before it goes to black. It maybe lasts 20 minutes, and it's a fun time to get out and shoot. And all of this information about the color of light here, the blue hour, the golden hour, that's in our assignment page on our Pixel NRG website. So be sure to look at that. It gives you a bunch of info. We talk about the golden hour, what to expect at high noon, mid-morning, the blue hour, and nighttime. Another Annie Griffiths. So this one, it's the reflection in the window. And it's quite a dramatic photograph, but I love the man looking out of the window, and his eyes are going up to the top of the frame, and it's kind of mimicking everything that's happening in that reflection. And then just the color of the whole. So the building and then the taxi, they have very similar hues, as does his face. So you start to have a triangular composition happening here. Backlit, the shadows. It's just a very beautiful, calm, subtle photograph. The light illuminating this man's face from his computer screen. And then that little bit of light over in the back, we know he's in the kitchen. So it all builds to tell the story. What's he doing? Well, he was a judge and they were out on COVID and they were still asked to dress in their formal garb for their court cases. Just the beautiful color of light here, the drama up at the top, the darkness pushing us down to the conductor. Buoyant silhouette, the balloons glowing with the light. And I have to say, as you get out and start looking for light, you're going to start to see it a lot more. The more you look, the more you're going to see. And this is all dependent on time of day too. So to get light like this, it's late in the day before it gets dark, or early in the morning. Dramatic long shadows from up above. We can do this in Vegas. There are so many walkways to cross, and you can find images to make along these lines. Everything has a place. Once again, the dramatic shadows, yet that light illuminating these bags and popping out the color. A reflection. Jay Maisel, one of the greatest street photographers and photographers in general around. He's in his 80s, late 80s. There's a new movie out, well, within the last year, about him. He had a building in New York City that was an old bank, and it was about moving out of that bank. And it was done by another photographer, and I'm just drawing a blank, but I will gather that info and send it out in one of our weekly emails to you guys. But Jay believes that you should never leave the home without your camera. He never goes anywhere without a camera. He's always making images. Does he do something with all those images? No, you don't have to. It's just part of his history, part of his story. And he has a vast collection of fantastic images because he's always looking. This is drama-filled. Look at all that black, but it's pushing us up to this light hitting these buildings, and then that beautiful cloudy sky. And then there's just two little windows up at the top that are just kind of like little eyes looking down into the scene. We make relationships. It's something we want to do when we're looking at photography. Beautiful color. Once again, a sharp shadow up in the back, a silhouette. This is very flat lighting. Everything is gray, but what a beautiful scene. The snow and then these white swans, so it all works together. So make the best of your lighting conditions. Some shadows coming in. Just color. We live in Vegas. You have neon and color all over the place, so use it. You may have to crank up your ISO to make a shot like this so that you can get a high enough shutter speed that things are not blurry. Remember, the lowest shutter speed you want to hand hold at is 1/60th of a second with a 50mm lens. If you had a 200mm lens, 1/250th of a second. So you want to match up the shutter speed to the length of your lens, because the bigger the lens, the heavier they are, and then you have to have a faster shutter speed to hold it steady. So a little bit of remembering there. But this is probably a wide angle. And as you practice, you get steadier too. A couple of Instagram shots, very moody, dramatic, atmospheric light in these. So you might want to grab the name here and follow this photographer. He does a ton of stuff like this. I really enjoyed it. Another one of his using the light on the outside of the building, colored light. So you can shoot at night. It just has to be in focus. Dramatic shadow. And then everything's working, the wall, so it's like it's pulling you in. So it's creating lines that our eye is moving around with. A swoop of light hitting the woman. Same photographer. The light hitting her, and then a silhouette of a person in front. The glow, so this is a flash or something behind that's just illuminating them. A little bounce light in there to get it on that side of the face as well. A couple of macro shots. So macro shots are when you get in close, and we have macro lenses, so that you can get even closer and focus closer than you can with a traditional lens. You can check out a macro lens from CSN for Canon cameras. I think we might have a few for Nikon. Unfortunately, I don't think we have any for Sony or Fuji. But some of your lenses, some of your zoom lenses will have a macro capability too. So play with them and see how close you can get. That's also one of our technical projects, is to fill the frame with a small object. Not crop it, but fill the frame. But I love the illumination here. It's dramatic. We know what it is, but there's some abstraction in there as well. Using window light and the louvers of the shade for drama, a classic approach to portrait photography. A dramatic shadow of a statue hitting that church. Time of day, so we're heading towards the blue hour here, or the golden hour. The pool being illuminated and then that beautiful light in the background, that was all natural, not manipulated. During that blue hour, the lights of the building start to pop on, yet we still have detail because there's still enough light hitting the surrounding area. So you get a beautiful sky, you start to have the drama of the city. The color of light. These were all done at night. I made this set of work, and this is where we're going to finish with these. Once again, just walking around my neighborhood, waiting for cars to drive by and create the light that's hitting things, having lights on inside, having lights on in people's yards to illuminate their landscaping or their home. These are shot at super, super high ISO with a Sony camera, like 12,000 ISO, some 25,000. That's creating some grain. You can kind of see it in this image. I didn't care. I was just playing. And my play led to having a whole body of work when I was through. So the grain just became part of it. It was part of the inherent nature of what I was doing. And these were all handheld. Let me tell you, there were a whole lot that didn't make it in because they were blurry. Because even though I'm hand-holding, some of these are 1 and 2 second long exposures. I was playing with Nik color effects as well for some of these images to enhance colors and change colors a little bit. But the colors and the light started out as what was there, but I may have changed the tone. The blue light. Layering of space, a foreground, a middle ground, and a background here. Something to carry our eye through, to hold us longer. Playing with cars driving by. Car heading right towards me. And I think this is the very last photograph, and it's one of my favorites, and I'm looking at it hung on my wall right next to where I'm working right now. Since this image was made back in 2016, this whole area has been rebuilt and cleaned up and restored. So this photograph couldn't happen today. It could only happen back then. Okay, so you're looking for light. You're looking for light to illuminate your subjects. You're looking for shadows to lead the eye. And some of this, you're going to be thinking, wow, it really connects to what we were doing last week with line. So line and shadow, color and shadow. In the shadows, look to see what color might be popping out as well. Sometimes during the day, it's a blue tone. If you're inside, maybe the shadows are picking up yellow from a room. So just look, tell us some stories.